Hello and welcome to Vancouver Carpenter. Today I'm going to teach you how to fix a peaked joint. So that is when you have a paper tape joint and the sheets have had some movement or they've compressed or the joint is hollow, and either way what it's done is it's created this little line right here. So you probably can't see it from this angle, but here we are right there. So how do we fix that? Well, the first thing we need to do is figure out why it's doing that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carve it open and see first off if it was a hollow joint or not. So first things first, I'm going to carve it open and see what we have underneath. Okay, there's the joint. Okay, there we are. So it's not too hollow, which is good, but I still want to carve it out so that I can fill it full of mud and make it nice and strong again. So I don't need to go any further than that because my baseboard's going to cover. But actually drawing that pencil line made it impossible for me to see where the actual joint was, and I had a really hard time running my knife down. So I'm just actually going to keep carving it out. So this may seem excessive, but I'm trying to make sure that this actually doesn't come back, because I could have just covered it with mud and it would be fine. It might take a year or two before it shows up again, but I really want to fuse these two joints together and make sure this doesn't come back again. It's possible that this was just a fastening issue, so I'm going to add some more screws just in case. Now that it's well fastened, I'm going to vacuum it out to make sure it gets a good bond to the new mud. Okay, so now I want to pre-fill this joint, and I'm going to pre-fill it using Quickset mixed with quite a bit of glue actually. So this is my thin down glue technique. So I don't need much just for pre-fill. So I've got just a little bit of water in here. Probably about 50% of my glue mix, so I wouldn't be surprised if this mix I'm making is about 25% glue. Only need about a handful. And I'm going to keep this mix pretty thick. I don't want it getting really wet. The wetter it is, the more it shrinks. So now I'm going to pre-fill this really well. Really making sure I force that mud into the cracks. So this right here is 90-minute mud. I'm gonna leave this mud in here and I'm gonna let this drywall actually absorb some of the moisture. I'm gonna come back in about 10 or 15 minutes, and this mud in here should still be good enough to tape with. So I've left it for about half an hour. It's had tons of time to shrink. So now I'm going to tape it, and I'm going to use paper tape. I always prefer paper tape on things like this. The reason is, if even paper tape can fail on a joint like this, why would I use something like mesh tape that's even more likely to fail? So again, now that this has had a little time to shrink, my mud's still good, and I'm going to tape this up. Get a nice even coat of mud on there. I'm gonna lightly embed it and give it just a little time for the tape to soak in the moisture and some of the glue and mud. Okay, so I've given this just about a minute to soak up the mud. Now, if you need a more in-depth video about how to tape a butt joint, I have one of those too, so you can check that out. This is just drywall repair, fixing a crack. Now, because this was already on a butt joint, there's a good chance that this is going to need to be built out a lot. So instead of throwing away this 90 minute I have, I'm just going to add a little bit more onto here, just to the outside edges. Waste not, want not. So I'm going to let this set up now before I do any other coats. Now, it's not important that you use Quickset for anything other than the pre-fill. You could do the rest of this with all-purpose mud, or you could use Quickset to pre-fill, taping to tape, and then finish mud to cover, or you could use all-purpose for the whole thing if you want to give it enough time to shrink and dry, which is overnight for each coat. But for the purposes of making videos, I like to use Quickset so that I can film the whole thing in one day. So delightfully, my mud has actually set up in less than 90 minutes. So I'm just gonna flatten it down a little bit, the tiny little lift-offs there are. And now it's time to coat it. So I'm just gonna do another coat of 90 minute. This is the Cinco Pro Set 90, and I don't trust this product without glue in it. I have had this stuff fall off the wall before too, but much less glue this time. This is maybe about a 1 to 10 ratio. Now, quick little pro tip, the less you clean your mixing water, the faster your mud's gonna keep setting, which is probably why this set in under an hour instead of 90 minutes. Conversely, if you wanna keep your set time consistent, make sure you clean everything and keep your water nice and clean. So before I coat it, I'm gonna see how it looks. And actually, amazingly, it's not that hump. So I think I only need about 1 trowel width on each side of this. If you want a more detailed video on how to coat butt joints, I have an incredibly long one that's worth watching about getting flat walls. But for the purpose of this, you can just watch. Some of the little crumbs in the mud, but they'll work out. Okay, we are all smooth. And now it is just time to feather my edge. Feather my edge. Almost there. One final pass down the middle to flatten it right out. Now, it doesn't look perfect yet, but this is just the loading coat. So it's now set up, and let's take an up-close look at it. So as you can see, I got some lift-off lines from my trowel work. Now I'm just going to quickly polish off some of those high spots. So it's looking pretty good. Also, what I like to do is I'm going to check it to see how flat everything's looking, because sometimes you might have like a big hump in there and not know about it, but everything's looking really good. Oh, what's that? One little spot. You can use your trowel this way to kind of shave it off too. It's a nice broad flat surface and it'll help you shave down the high spots. So that's looking good. It's ready for a coat of finish mud. Actually, I almost forgot. When working with Quickset, I sometimes like to burn my edges down a little bit so they don't show through on my second coat. Only the very edge is dry enough to sand, but that's all I needed. Now it's just coat it again, this time thinner and smooth. I think it needs one more time over. I'm pretty happy with that. Let's take an up close look. Well, actually there's not much to see. But there it is, looking smoother. Ready for just one sand. So that is obviously going to take a few days to dry, and like I said before, you could do this with regular air drying mud and do it each stage one day at a time, but that's my method for fixing peaked joints, cracked joints. Actually, you can fix a lot of things like that. I've even had good success with fixing major structural cracks that way, that I've come back to 3 years later and still haven't cracked. Although fixing any structural crack is always going to be cross your fingers and hope it doesn't come back, no matter what you do. So the main principle behind this repair is you just want to clear out all the stuff that's not stuck together anymore, and you want to create a really nice fused together joint. That's why I add the extra glue, that's why I like Quickset because it's strong, and that's why I like paper tape because, well, the face of drywall is paper to begin with, so just seems to work. So anyways, thanks for watching Vancouver Carpenter. If you found this useful, feel free to leave a thumbs up and a comment below. Also, feel free to subscribe if you don't want to miss any more useful videos that are going to help you get some nice, beautiful, smooth walls. So, thanks for watching. Until the next video.